here we are with producer, actor, director, kind of the everyman of Rooster Teeth, Brandon Farmahini. How are you doing, sir?
You're too kind. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Hey, do that thing.
Oh, do that one thing that you do from that one movie.
Do it.
Oh, that's it! Were you a single-digit hire at Rooster Teeth?
Yeah, I think I was employee number 7. I think I was hired after Nathan. It was Bernie, Jeff, then Gus came in, Matt, Joel, I think came in later, and then Nathan after Joel, and then I came in after Nathan.
How did you get hired? Well, take us through that.
Yeah, so I didn't really, and it's going to piss a lot of people off. I didn't really know anything about Rooster Teeth. I was in film school at UT, and I ran the student television station. I had produced my own video game show, which I think Gus used to watch and make fun of. Because, like, you know, it's students learning how to do shit live on TV. It's a great experience. A big thing that I was doing is hosting this fundraiser, a film festival, but a comedy film festival. Because I always felt like film festivals in college, they're always so dramatic. And since they're going to be bad most of the time, like bad drama, like it's just not fun.
Hey, Neil, why don't you not be an idiot, okay? How about you not be an idiot? Yeah, hey, idiot, I'm talking to you, idiot. You want to not...
So this was a comedic film festival. So I loved the combination of the commentary with the content. So I thought it would be cool to have judges that not only have a strong comedic sense, but also can talk. And they would talk about every short after they saw it. So I reached out to Bernie Burns, because he had come through the same television station. He worked on a show, Sneak Peek, that I oversaw as entertainment director and, you know, helped produce. So I knew of Bernie, and I just gave him a call or an email, and I was like, hey, do you want to come and do this film festival? So he agreed. He came out. I think he brought Jeff and Matt. So we put out, like, you know, a lot of feelers and got like a lot of submissions, and I had to go through and watch each one. But I curated everything to make sure it was all stuff that was enjoyable to some degree, and that even included a entry from Miles Luna.
Yes, I love tacos.
We're gonna be late, but this is totally worth it.
Oh, okay, dude, here you go. That's yours.
It was funny though, because it kind of plants the seeds of what became like the next generation of Rooster Teeth people. Because basically, the relationship that Bernie and I formed there kind of led to a big pipeline, and without that, you know, Rooster Teeth never would have had Marshall, Chris, Miles, Lindsay, Aaron, you know, a decent amount of other people, both Aarons, Aaron Zeck, the voice of Blake, and Aaron Marquis. So Bernie was really impressed, and he kind of caught me off guard, because I had been basically like scrounging for money for this digital transmitter, because this was at the time in 2008 or 9 where we were going from analog TV to digital, and we needed a digital antenna. And he just told me, he was like, how much money do you need? Like, it was such a baller thing to say, like a blank check. And so I just asked for $1,000, which is what the largest donation we had was. And I regret it. I should have asked for 100,000. But so he gave me that, and that was that. That was sometime in the spring. And then a couple months later, it was time for me to graduate. And I just said, hey, I emailed him. I was like, hey, Bernie, nice to talk to you again. I just want to know if I could drop by my resume. I didn't ask for a job. You know, I just offered to drop it off, because I had planned to move to LA, and I was dating someone at the time in Austin, and I was like, well, it'd be really nice to get a job here. And this was at the time they just started doing the RT shorts. So I saw like an opportunity where I could kind of fit in well. So he just invited me out to have a conversation, which kind of turned into a job interview. And I think it was me, him, and Jeff. And I don't think Jeff was impressed. And the only thing I really remember about it was, you know, they'd asked me like what kind of media did I think where things were going, or what really impressed me. And the thing that I called out was The Lonely Island. Lazy Sunday was basically like one of the first big YouTube things that wasn't just pirated television show. I mean, obviously it's still a TV show, but it blew up in a very viral way that was really rare to see. And you all of a sudden had things with YouTube being able to become like, pop culture almost instantly. That wasn't just necessarily Comedy Central clips or South Park clips. I met with him again, and he offered me a job. So he hired me. It was 30 grand a year, and so I was like, I'll make that work.
Okay.
And
how far did 30 grand a year go in Austin back then?
I mean, you can go to like one of those websites that'll tell you how much that is in today's money, but luckily housing wasn't yet that expensive, so my rent was like $550 a month or something, so I made it work, and the nice thing, at least at that time, I believe I was started to travel, so I had vacations without having to pay for it. That obviously changed once we started getting more and more people, but you're able to do things that you love, so you end up making prioritizations in your life, and that was being able to come in. And I think my first RT short that I worked on set was Devil Box. And like one of the first things I did was help Nathan with the sound. So I think the first thing I made was the sound effect of the Devil Box opening, which was like a bunch of layered screams and stuff with like drone effects.
Works. Check this out.
No. The water was so deep. She said she could swim. Nothing happened. And if it did, it wasn't my fault.
So yeah, I came in like, and towards the end of the first half of the RT shorts, maybe RT shorts 6 or 7.
And you're straight into the shorts. And what was the first short you were in?
It was the one, I think we're like meeting new employees. And I think it was in season 1. It might've been in season 2. I definitely wanted to be in more. I do love performing. It was just so tough because there were so many people that were better at it. Like there was always a better option. I know dress rehearsals was the first big one. Like I shot that one and directed it with Matt. It was based on a behind the scenes video that I had done a few weeks ago, which I guess was the first thing I shot, but it wasn't an actual short. It was just me shooting behind the scenes thing. I made like a little intro thing with like the cock and the bite. And then so Matt had an idea to play off of that as a behind the scenes thing, but it actually turns into an RT short. So, and that was what's great about the shorts is like we got to play with audience expectation and reality. And it was a lot of fun until we were like kind of burnt out on shorts.
What are some things from early Rooster Teeth in that Congress office that you're either still proud of or maybe didn't work out the way you wanted? Because like the Devil Box sound was fantastic. I had no idea that was you.
There's some stuff that was like, it still bothers me with how bad it was. Like the Protect Me Cone shirt was just so bad. And I couldn't get the design any better than that. And it sold so much and I felt so bad. My biggest contribution with the merch was probably the quote posters. I wish I would have had like a percentage, like even if it was like 0.01%, because those things sold for $20 a pop, cost $1 to make. And at least the caboose ones, like it's just insane how many we sold, but we did quote posters for all of them.
You did everything.
And that was the cool thing at that time is like, you really weren't pigeonholed into one thing. And I always felt like the best content we made was most of us working together on one thing instead of siloed. And I think in terms of a short, you saw that most with Angry Birds, because that was something that everybody touched. Nathan, Matt, and again, it's that one is primarily Marshall. So Marshall should get the majority of the credit, but it was a real group effort. And I always thought that's when we created the best stuff.
Won't like me when I'm angry. Birds.
With so few employees and in that Congress office, was it fun kind of touching all of these different productions?
The Congress office was so small. It was so small that you were just close to everything, both physically and content-wise. So Warning Era was a real fun one. Hotel Buddies was interesting because I think I edited most of that me and Nathan edited that while Matt and Joel were on site. And then Mixed Messages was a lot of fun. That's when I met Gavin, or I got to do the first thing with Gavin. And that was always special. Gavin and I always had an interesting relationship, especially as he became such a big deal. I was always thankful for being able to work on the slow-mo guys stuff. Overall, like the shorts were just like a really great experience. I think my favorite season 1 short might have been New Old Car with Jason, because Jason always cracked me up. If there was ever an opportunity to call in Jason or Becca, because Becca would say the grossest shit.
Yeah? Well, they say girls can't ejaculate either, but guess what?
They were my go-tos.
So you were mostly behind the camera on season 1 of the shorts.
I don't think I was in anything on season 1. I wanted to be, but like I don't like no one was really a big fan of my acting, and I was just so self-conscious. It was always very, very difficult for me to not constantly be thinking about what everybody was thinking watching me. Like even now, like I'd love to perform more, I'd love to be on camera more. Like it's just something that I really do enjoy, but it was just difficult because I came in, while I was at TSTV, I was like the guy, right? I was everyone's boss, like, a big deal in a small pond. And then I go into Rooster Teeth. I'm like the intern, right? Like you just, all of a sudden now you're just so small and unimportant. And there's so much gravitas around everyone around you. So it can get really, you can get in your own head.
Yeah, man, I hope you do try to do some more acting, because some of your acting in like the Gary Busey short was some of my favorite stuff you've done.
Yeah, I would love to. I'd really love I'd love to get not be such a wuss and go on auditions just to know I tried, because I really do. I'd love to perform more. It's like one of those things that you just start itching for.
One of my favorite shorts is the Prank Wars short with Gus and Matt. Do you have any fun stories from that one?
That was a really cool one and a really interesting dynamic. That was the one, I believe, with the Joel and Bernie cops that came in for the first time. Yeah, that was a fun one because and it shows like what a performer Bernie is, and how much trust he puts in it. Like that was one definitely on set I think Bernie didn't get the appeal of. And we were like, this is awesome. This is like the cop, I think Chris and I loved the cop dynamic. Even after that, Bernie, it was not a character that he ever personally really related with, but he put his trust in us, which is a big deal. And I think that was what made the company so special, is like everybody was willing to give someone an opportunity and trust them, and allow them to, hold their brand, or their identity and do something cool or fun with it.
Chris said something similar about Bernie not liking the concept of the office tour video.
No.
Did you have
Bernie was
anything
mad
like that?
because he was like, Bernie was mad because he was like, guys, the point of this is so we have less people coming in. They all want to see it. We need to do this honestly. And we're like, sure. Yeah. Chris and Marshall kind of went all over with it. The second one, Marshall wasn't with the company at that time, and that was mostly Chris and I. Chris probably wrote it, and we both directed it. And that's like Bernie just put his trust in people, and it paid off. And he's done that like time and time again with Gauntlet, especially the first season when we just like were kind of trying to figure it out on the fly. It takes like a pretty cool performer to be able to do that. And that's something that, from a director standpoint, you really cannot take it. You have to appreciate. You can't take it for granted.
Did you have anything else like that where someone didn't understand your idea, but then in post, they kind of saw the whole vision come together?
Yeah, a lot of times with Immersion, because we would do the commentary. So basically we would shoot like the meat and potatoes of Immersion, on site, right? And then all of the commentary of them like talking about what's happening would be done in editorial as a pickup. And there was a lot of times where I'm just like, I'm feeding them lines, showing them the edit, and like forcing them to like, look, just laugh. It's going to work. And it can feel very unnatural where you're just like on camera and you're being told to laugh or this. And I'm like, look, it'll work. Because the way that I was always really bad about storyboarding things, and it frustrated people quite a bit. But I can always see the edit in my head. And that's the way that I directed Immersion. Like, I get it. I know where this is going in the grand scheme of things. And I think for the most part, most of it worked out. Sometimes it didn't, and sometimes like Gauntlet season 1 was definitely one where, we wish we could have a few of those back. It was just hard to execute tonally what we were going for, where it was supposed to be a satire of a reality show, but then it started to feel more like an actual reality show. And then we were also fighting the sponsors because like they wanted too much input. And that really was like a reoccurring frustration on my part with ad sales, where I'm like, this stuff would work better for the sponsors if they just let us do what we want to do, and they just get mentioned. And Gauntlet season 2 was an example of that. Like Verizon was super awesome. They were just like, just make something good, and we're like, great. But like all of the worst ad videos we did were always the ones where the ad people had way too much say in it, and it was really frustrating. That was like a really frustrating aspect of the filmmaking process is having to work with sponsors that think they know what's going to be good for them. And it's like, we know the audience. If you make this fucking super salesy, if I have to say the N496 monitor, everyone's going to fucking hate your product.
If you're local, you live in Austin already, you could take part in the scavenger hunt. They're going to be hiding bottles of Alpha Brain all around town.
And then the tough thing too, and I think the thing that weighed on us so much, is we had to do, for every one sponsored video we did, there were probably 10 RFPs we had to spend a day brainstorming, and that wouldn't go anywhere. And it was really frustrating. At some point they came to me and were like, we have a cat food thing, and I just said no.
Oh, and can you explain an RFP?
I don't know how they communicate this through their different channels, but they would say we're looking to spend this much money, submit your ideas. So then we would have to submit like 2 or 3 ideas for sponsorship videos. And at one point, a couple years ago, I looked up some of my Notepad responses, and some of the ideas were really funny, and they didn't go for them. So most of the time, like, they're not going to go anywhere, and you just wasted a day while you could have been working on something else. So it was definitely like a more frustrating part, I think, for everybody.
I don't want to get too hung up on one particular thing, but I'm actually a huge fan of the first season of The Gauntlet.
Really? I thought everyone hated the first season of The Gauntlet.
That's what you think. Well, Brandon, unfortunately, I have a whole YouTube channel that mostly focuses on old Rooster Teeth stuff, so it was made for me, I guess.
Everyone at Rooster Teeth hated the first season of The Gauntlet, and I never heard the end of it, and I was like, sorry.
Yeah. Well, I will say, I didn't know you guys had to make so many changes. Can you kind of talk about what the concept was and what they ended up doing with it?
So we wanted to make something that was like a play off of it, but like, so that like the music. So I oversaw the post-production, and it wasn't edited by any of our normal people like the second season was. It was all contractors I had to hire out. I think Fabello, that might have been one of the first things he worked on. So like I found like this music cue for when someone was eliminated, and it was meant to feel like we were making fun of one of those reality shows, but it kind of just came off like we were trying to be a reality show, and we were trying to be sappy instead of mocking it. And it's just because we shot the whole thing an insanely tight window. We did have a good amount of help for the first time on a production standpoint. But like creatively, it was still like mostly it was just Chris and I. And like even in the first season of Gauntlet, Chris and I would meet at like 5 a.m. at 636, and we would drive the truck full of all of the film equipment to set. And we were directing and writing, right? And then at night, we would drive it back from San Marcos to South Austin and then go home. Like, so it was a lot. We were spread pretty thin. And I think every night we would go out afterwards to like a restaurant and like brainstorm about what we learned and what we could do for the next day. So it was just basically a lot to try to execute for something that we hadn't done before. And that's why the second season I thought was so special, because we learned so much. So like the second season was mostly edited by Chris, Josh, and Aaron, and I thought they did a great job. But even while we were shooting it, we had learned so much from the first season. And I think, that's really something that I'm proud of, that, you shoot your shot and then you learn and adapt. And one of my biggest regrets from Rooster Teeth was that we didn't get a second season of the Joel late night show, because there was so much stuff that I learned while making that, and the second season I felt like would have been so on point and good, but we didn't get a second season. So it was very cool to be able to do what I felt like everyone hated. So I'm happy to hear that you liked Gauntlet season 1, and Gauntlet season 2 is something that I really love. And I'm watching the Mr. Beast show right now, and it's good, but it's frustrating because I do feel like if we could have like continued to leverage content like that, and really focused on concept over production value, we could have ended up, we could be where Mr. Beast is today. And that's definitely, something that doesn't haunt me, but it just, missed opportunities.
Now that you mention it, I probably what Geico wanted, like when you heard her say these things. Season of Gauntlet.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a show that lacked any kind of it didn't know what it was, and that's why I think in season 2 you see how we pivoted, and it was Joel and Bernie, and then we progressively got more absurd with all of those intros and their dynamic dealing with the teams, and we were able to kind of set up bits from the beginning. Like I think one of my favorite things, I'm pretty sure it was mine idea, was the Rooster Teeth team having like the shitty boiler room. These are all bits that you can work off once you have a better idea of what your vision is. But when we made Gauntlet, I don't think there was another show that was like that, at that time. And now that's all Mr. Beast does. So yeah, like you're absolutely right. It was a show that didn't understand what it was trying to be. And, you had to, at the time, like I had to just learn to accept that and then hope, we could learn from it. And I do think we did. And I thought the second season was really good. And I wish we could have made more.
I will say one of my favorite things from the first season was you had a pretty diverse cast of characters from that round of auditions. One of them was even Josh, who ended up making Red versus Blue with you guys.
Yeah. I mean, it was fun. Like I remember the auditions we did. A lot of people showed up, and it was definitely like a good time being able to like have everybody introduce themselves and their character. I remember Josh. Josh just had like the right look, and I was like, that guy's in, like this like cool vibe. And I was like, I want that guy in the show. And then he eventually, along with Sam, I think from season 2, worked at the company. So that was cool to see cast members from the Gauntlet jump over into actually working for the company for years. The funny thing about Josh is after the show, I went to his house to shoot some like background on him for like the final episode. And his mom came home during that. And his mom was like, "What is this?" And he was like, "Oh, I did a reality TV show." She was like, "What?" Like his mom had no idea that he was on the show. And yeah, we found out. I don't think we were recording it, but I was definitely there, and it was like I love awkwardness and I love awkward moments, so I just like ate it up.
Moving on to another thing that I think you guys were way ahead of everyone else on was Immersion. Can you talk about that concept and just your work on the show?
It was really great. Like Bernie had this concept, and he worked out the rig, and then he kind of let me, shoot it. So I directed and I directed it on set, and then also, I directed it. I built all of the segments, outlined what was going to go where, and then I was doing editorial while they were off in PAX. And Bernie was. It was always tough showing Bernie an edit because you would say like Bernie, look, this is an assembly. You have to think about where this is going. But he would freak out if it wasn't where it needs to be. And that definitely happened with like the first cut because it was like super long and I hadn't put in all the effects. But I had this idea of like the concept is immersion and we're testing these elements out. Why don't we also take visual elements from the game and put it in there? So then I would record. Because we were all set up for Red versus Blue, so I would video capture Grand Theft Auto, and then I would key out certain like foreground or the background, and keep like these foreground elements to add on like HUD elements from the game to make it feel more like it was actually in the game. And I think once I added all of those things into it, and then like like truncated, got it a little bit shorter. Then everyone saw it, and I think Bernie showed it to his wife at the time, and she like loved it. It was like that's when it clicked for her and clicked for everybody. Like, okay, this is a show, and let's roll with it. Yeah, Immersion wasn't just like a good name for the show. It was like, really, let's make this feel like we are fusing real life and video games together. And a part of that, it's like satire and parody. You have to use the source elements in order to create that connection. So that was like and you see that in every single one, and a lot of those just came from photoshopping or After Effects rotoscoping or keying out actual footage from the games. You see in Doom and pretty much everything. We wanted it to feel like the game, but also have a sense of real life footage. And that was a really fun season to shoot. And it's we shot it for like no money. Like every episode was just like spend as little money as possible. And that was like pretty much my MO while I was running shorts was, if we spend too much money on this shit, some accountant, some fucking responsible adult is going to come in and shut this shit down, because we are never going to make the money that animation makes. We are never going to sell as many DVDs. We are never going to sell as many shirts. We need to go under the radar budget wise, or we are fucked. So, I still think that was, the way to go. But it's obviously not fun for the people where you're telling them like, hey, we can't spend this much money. We have to do things as like cheap as possible. And you see that, especially in the first season. You see that in the Fruit Ninja episode. You see that even in the Pac-Man episode, because it was like, if we can't do it with us, then we're not going to do it, because I can't hire a whole crew. Because at some point, some responsible adult is going to be like, you can't lose this much money for a video that is going to make at best 1 million views. At best.
Like, what is a budget on an episode of Immersion, if you remember?
Ignoring soft costs, like the cost of everyone's time and their salary. We tried to do each episode for less than $1,000. You see that through all of the immersions until you start getting to the sponsored ones. Like, I think the race car one was the first high budget immersion, and that was one of my favorite shoots that we've done. I was, be able to work with Chris on that, and it was a tremendous experience. Chris and I directed the pilot episode, but then Chris and I co-directed the rest of the first season of Immersion, and there were a lot of good times. The food one was really fun, getting to wake up Jeff and Gus at 4 a.m. and like having them eat all of this shit, But yeah, it was always like, we are going to spend as little money as we possibly can. We could spend an extra $1,000 and make this look a lot better, but it's not going to make more people watch it. It's going to make the company look a little bit better, but it's also going to be money we spent that ultimately will be on our, will be a reflection of the amount of money that we are spending. Because we're basically spending the money that Red versus Blue and later Ruby and Achievement Hunter made. Like, live action was never going to turn a profit, ever.
Sure.
And it never did. Because it's just too expensive per view.
My favorite immersion, and a lot of people's favorite immersion, was that food. Can you give us a peek behind the curtain?
Yeah.
Is there any? What can you tell us about that one?
I think I don't remember who it was. It might have been Bernie was frustrated that one was so popular. It was definitely one in editorial that I don't think Matt and Bernie liked that much, but it was so popular with the fans. So it's one of those things, and you hear other content creators say this. You see hear Key and Pool say it a lot. Sometimes you don't know what's really going to resonate. And that one really worked just because Jeff and Gus are so comedically talented, but it just worked. It was just comedy. It was basically like we're not making high art here. It's a very simple concept, but it's executed, I think, as best it possibly can. And I think that's what makes it successful. And that was always my focus, was like, look, like, what is the bit? And let's commit to the bit, and let's invest in the bit. And if, we can spend more money doing some other aspect of it and it's not going to serve the bit, then I don't think that's like money worth spending. And that one was just one that I thought was just executed like, pretty perfectly.
The question I always the question I always see people ask is like, did you really wake him up at 4 a.m.? And I think that's been answered a lot with like, you woke him up and then there were pickups. Where did the food come from?
We had somebody make that and prepare that. I don't remember who it was. But we basically gave like a laundry list of things we wanted. A lot of it was influenced by Doom and Wolfenstein. They always had like the random food there, like the turkey and the pizza. And I remember the pizza being the hardest thing for them to eat and the thing that made them the most sick. But yeah, we absolutely did get there 4 or 5 in the morning. I was shooting Gus's ass, and I had to focus on it. And it was a DSLR, so it's always those are always like the focus is a lot. It's a lot narrower, right? So I really had to go on that ass cheek and make sure it was perfectly in focus. And you can see the rack focus in there.
Right.
They were really that hungover. They could have just said, fuck off, we're not doing this. But even with how shitty they physically felt, I think they knew this is funny. Like, this is a good bit. And it kind of goes back to like a motif that we had, I think, at least very early on, was that like, look, let's make stuff that we think is good and that we like, and then let the chips fall where they may. And I think, Gus and Jeff in that first season of Immersion put a lot of trust in us, in me. And I'm really glad to hear like, so many people liked that season. But you can definitely see how low budget it is, compared to, basically once we got to the simulation racer, that's when the budget started going a lot higher.
So key to success, commit to the bit.
I wasn't the most talented person that worked at Rooster Teeth, by far, but like, I'll commit to the content, and that is one of the things that I think made like a lot of us so, made everything so enjoyable, was because everyone worked so hard. For such a long time, like the Siri commercial. No, I'm not talking. Sorry, now all my Apple devices are popping up. That was a real fun example of like, everybody putting their all into it. I think I stood outside in the rain with a flag over a light for like 45 minutes while Marshall got this shot, because I knew the bit was going to work. I knew the concept was going to work, and everyone put they're all into that. And I think that's when you get the best content, when you have a lot of talented people who are invested and really care about what's gonna come out.
Well, in the same vein as live action, can you talk about your involvement with the Rooster Teeth video podcast or the old Drunk Tank podcast? I know you were in a few of those episodes right at the beginning when they were in that little office in 636.
Yeah. So the video podcast was Gus and I want to make sure everyone understands that Gus was the driving point of that. I don't want to take any credit away from him. I did work a lot though on helping build out the infrastructure for what would become, the broadcast portion of that show. And it's kind of like a common thing at my time at the company is like, we would create something from scratch, launch it, build it to a point, and then hire like a real adult to actually run it. That's, and it wasn't just me. Like, you see that a lot. Like, Jeff used to be the merch. He handled all the merch stuff, Jeff Ramsey. And then eventually, we all contributed, we all did our part. And then eventually it's like, all right, let's hire like an adult to do this. And the video podcast was no exception. It got to a point where we're like, all right, let's bring in someone like Patrick Salazar to actually take care of this and own it. But I was really thankful for, being able to build it. And then, cause I had a lot of experience at the TV station and working in studio production. So we were able to build this master control room. We had switchers, we had like video playback and stuff, and all of these elements. So it was really cool to be able to do that. And I especially loved being able to work so closely with Gus, because he's just such a tremendous talent.
Well, you were also on the Rooster Teeth podcast a lot, especially in those early days when it was still the Drunk Tank, and you got into a lot of arguments with the guys, some of which you were very, very right about. One of my favorites was, do you remember the magnetic South Pole argument?
Yeah. Unfortunately, there was one aspect of it that I was wrong about. That's the truth. I think all of the arguments on the podcast is like, people are right about different elements of it, and then everyone else focuses on the thing they're wrong about and tries to make that the deciding factor. So that was a fun one for a while, and then I think eventually, like, it got a little tiring, and so like we never went back to it. But that was always, like I loved doing the podcast, and it was always like a real pleasure, and I was always very honored, to be a part of it and to be invited. It was great because you get to let your personality run amok in a way that you can't normally do in a business. But it's like when the podcast starts and the recording starts, let's fucking go. Let's go, motherfucker.
I mean, your arguments were always like the funniest ones to me early on, where, I mean, you guys would get so committed and they would just really come after you sometimes, right or wrong. And you would just dig in. It was fantastic.
It doesn't really matter who's right. What matters is like, this is fun. This is funny. This is a funny thing for us to do, and I think that's one element that the fans never really understood was that I think they think everything is a little more literal than it was. I think a really good way to look at Rooster Teeth is it's like professional wrestlers without the wrestling aspect of it, and that all of our personalities were played up as a caricature for entertainment. But then a lot of kids just don't get that, right? So they assume they're like, oh, the way he explained it was really dumb. It's like, no, the way I explained it was in a way to make it funnier as we're trying to have this conversation. No, if we were actually having this discussion as like a normal discussion, like in the car, you would not watch it. Like we are intentionally trying to talk to each other and build a tone that is funny and makes time go by quicker. So then you play into certain tropes, you commit to certain bits, you intentionally can explain something in a way that you think is funny, and you're trying to kind of troll the other person on the podcast and the audience, because it's not always super entertaining and fun and funny to explain something in the most clear and direct way. And I think like Ben was the first one to warn me about that like the fans don't always get the bits. They might think things are just a little bit more literal, and you're like, bro, everyone was themselves, but they were themselves to 10 in order for it to be fun and funny. And that was always the hope. The hope was always just no dead air, make sure the conversation keeps moving. And that became harder when we tried to launch the Thursday podcast. Like I remember struggling because
why is that?
I don't know. I remember like one time specifically, I had like asked, like basically before the show when I would always do this, but especially if Gus wasn't on it, I would go and I would research, I would Google weird news, basically talking points in order to spur conversations. And I remember bringing something up, and then like, I remember who was on, but I was like, what do you think about this? Or this, or do you think this is blah, 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 blah? And they were just like, no. And in dead air. And I'm like, bro, come on, and that was the thing that never took off. The Thursday show was always a struggle, in part because, and I think this is one of the things that killed Rooster Teeth, is that YouTube culturally is so much about the view count, in a way that is so detrimental to new IP. And it's a lesson that Netflix learned and had committed to, because Netflix does not publish viewership things because they don't want people to know how few people are watching something. They want to give things the chance to develop naturally over time. But if we put out a video and the views were like less than 50,000, it all of a sudden becomes a PR crisis and we have to kill that product. So like nothing got a chance to develop that wasn't an instant success. And that's a really difficult standard. And I think you end up losing opportunities for content that can be that good, because some things just need a little bit more time. Some things are a little bit ahead of the curve. A lot of other stuff did too. Countless other things that if we could have just had the opportunity to let it play out, could have delivered. But you lived at that point in time. You lived and died by your YouTube views.
You were one of the staples of the podcast for such a long time, both, in front of the camera, but really behind the camera. But I mean, I remember people being particularly negative about your performances on the podcast. Is that a perception you had at the time, or now even?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I think there's certain elements of it. I think a lot of times, sometimes I just wasn't good. I'm just not as funny as Bernie. I'm not as funny as Gus and Joel and Jeff, and that's okay. There is another element I think that played into it from my perspective, from at least the feedback I got and some of the others, was that I think it's harder for younger fans to see someone come in younger because they want to be in that spot. They want to see themselves in that position, so they might be a little bit more critical. But, at the end of the day, a lot of times the stuff they were saying wasn't wrong, and you just kind of have to learn to brush it off. And I was good at that for a while. But when I started having my own problems, outside of, the work, then you start looking for that negative stuff, and then you start internalizing it because it reinforces already these negative thoughts that you're having. And it's like you're able to, confirm these things about yourself, and then it comes in your head, and then it affects your performance more, and it makes the way that you perform worse, which then creates more negative comments. So it's like this kind of like feedback loop. And the only part I started to struggle with was, and this was why I just started doing less and less on camera, was, the idea that somebody would watch something less if I was in it. Because then it's just an issue of, okay, I'm not playing a foil that they love to hate. I'm actually making the content worse. So that was the hardest thing to accept, that like the best thing for the content is for me just to not to be a part of it, which is, something I really wanted to do. Like I wanted to be in more things. So, it would have been fine, but like I was going through, my own stuff, and you kind of allow that to help fan the flames, and then it just sabotages your performance more. Some people got the bit, some people definitely didn't. But it was a whole different era. Like people were just very honest and truthful.
I don't know about honest and truthful. It might have been their perception of it, I guess, which is pretty much what you were saying. I know I've gotten some feedback in the past about like maybe yapping too much, and it's one of those things that has kind of stuck with me. Is there any particular type of comment, or a comment in particular that was one that was really affecting you at the time, or you still think about?
The stuff like about intelligence, I thought was like, there was one comment specifically, I guess from another millennial, that's like, I'm so sorry. I want to apologize on behalf of all millennials. He's such a stupid representation of us. And I was like, look, bro, like the way that we talk to each other, we do it because we're friends. And I think that's what people didn't get. Like they wanted the same rights to be able to talk about us in a way that you can only do if you're actually friends with those people. Like Jeff would say the fucking meanest shit, right? But Jeff and I were friends. I liked Jeff as a person. I still like Jeff. And it's because I liked him and we liked each other that like that's okay. So I think those comments were like, yeah, that affected me, because they would focus in on things that were obviously a fucking bit. Or they would be somewhat arbitrary, like he doesn't know about snakes, so he's not intelligent. I was like, there's a difference between knowledge and intelligence, and knowledge itself is quite subjective. I didn't grow up in an area where I needed to fucking know about snakes or spiders. But I think in general, people are so desperate to think that they are smarter than other people because of their own insecurities, that they will focus on things that are arbitrary or subjective, based on maybe how you grew up or where you grew up, and they will say that is what defines intelligence. And it's like, no, not really. But it's really just the stuff about making content worse. No. There was a whole debate on whether I was autistic, which I was like, what the fuck?
What?
And then for a second, like when I would get fucking high, I'd be like, fuck, am I autistic? I am like
God.
ADHD. The main thing that like really resonated with me was just that I could make content worse by being in it, because that in itself then becomes a thing of like, well, then what are we doing here? Like, how can I both do the thing that I really love and want doing, but also be respectful to my peers that are also doing this stuff and not be the reason why this is not as successful? So that was like the biggest reason why when I came back from a hiatus to take over Sports Ball Season 2, I didn't do anything on camera because I didn't want to be the reason why it failed. I was that paranoid about it. I mean, kind of, but like at the end of the day, if it's true and if people are legitimately not watching, you want to be able to make the content as successful as you can. So you end up having to, make those sacrifices for the greater good. And then again, a lot of times it was affecting, and my performance wasn't as good.
The most common thing that I've seen, and this isn't a lie, I'm telling you for real, is I was really hard on Brandon and now I love him in content. That is like the unanimous thing that I see. I've probably seen it 100 times, honestly.
Yeah.
People
I think
have really come
that
around.
part of it is, I think that part of it is people being sensitive to new faces. And I think other people had to deal with it. Jeremy, basically all the new people in Achievement Hunter had to deal with it.
Yeah.
I know like after I had left, all of the new people they brought in, I think had to deal with it. It's just harder because I think secretly you see yourself in that. Like I know when I was a kid and watching Power Rangers and they brought in the Kid Ranger, Justin, I was like, this guy sucks, right? Because I always imagined myself in that role, not seriously being casted on Power Rangers. I'm just saying as a viewer, when you're watching this, you see yourself in this. You're a little bit more, critical. And I also think at times Gus always really understood this, that I would try to play a foil basically in order to help support and enable everyone else to be successful. Like when I was saying something, you're basically lobbing something up for someone else to hit a home run. Like I know where this is going to go. I know if I say something, I know if I say this, and if I say it like this, I know this person and this person are going to be able to build off of it. And I think when you're younger, maybe it's harder to see that this is not a random conversation, but this is I don't know if you want to call it a dance, but it is it is performance, right? A live performance that people are doing. And you're maybe more able to appreciate those who were able to set up those moments and build those good moments that you like. When at the time you thought, oh yeah, they're just shutting him down because what he said was dumb. It's like, well, no, he was kind of working to create like a good moment. And that's why Gus kept bringing me back until, eventually I just don't think I think my performance was just struggling.
I also wanted to hit you with some old podcast topics to see how your stances have either stayed the same or changed. So when did Power Rangers fall off?
When do I think Power Rangers fell off?
Yeah.
Turbo. I thought Turbo was just awful and bad.
Which one was
weird.
Turbo?
Turbo was the one with the cars. The movie itself had better acting than the first movie, but the actual season was just bad. That's when the kid came in. Wait, are we talking about the show or in the context of the podcast?
Well, actually, there was one specific episode where they were giving you shit for debating where Power Rangers fell off. And I think in that one you said it was when they became cars or maybe when they went to space. But I think it was cars.
I was outside. By the time in space, I was like, nope, cars, they lost me. Which is funny because the season that's based on is like actually really good and funny because in Japan that season is satirical. It's a parody of the show, but in America they played it straight, right?
Yeah.
So I'll say this really quickly about Power Rangers is that you could teach
please do.
a class in film school editorially about Power Rangers because essentially everyone knows it's an adaptation from a Japanese show, but in the Japanese show it changes every year. New cast and new everything. And that's eventually they did that in the American show. But when they started, they were like so attached to the original cast and like the same like look that editorially they had to do some amazingly creative things with it. And I think me and James Williams recorded a whole podcast. James had to edit some of the stuff. And I think it was a podcast. I don't know if it was all day. That show was really fascinating as an editor. I played a lot. I think I'm pretty but it really is a masterclass in creativity of what they have to do to make that show work. And I'm not going to. I could talk about it for an hour, and I'm not going to do that. But if you don't know, it's really fascinating. Try to make a good movie with good acting and a plot, and then people just didn't love it, and they did like I always had dreams about being able to direct like Power Rangers movies. Like there's like a few franchises in my wild like that in my career I would love to be a part of. That was definitely one of them. Another one would have been like Final Fantasy. It reminded me so much of Monty, just because so much of Monty's work was influenced by Final Fantasy. And I don't just mean because he made, the dancing videos and the fighting videos with the models, but so much of what you saw in Red versus Blue, especially like the highway chase scenes, were motivated by the highway chase scenes, the motorcycle fight in Final Fantasy VII. But so much of what Monty did was influenced. So when I played through that, there were so many moments that just like reminded me of him that I kept putting off playing the sequel because at some point I'm going to finish it. And then I'm like not going to get that feeling again, of being able to like, revisit those conversations and experiences and, everything with him. But I am playing through it right now. And it's great. But yeah, I've always wanted to make a live action movie of Final Fantasy IX.
Oh, man. All right, I think I let us off the tracks a little bit. Getting back on the rails, I got to interview Chris a few months ago. You've already sang his praises tonight, and he was really nice guy, really interesting.
There's absolutely no one at the company that I loved working with more than Chris. I mean, we went through so much together. We slept next to each other so many times at the office. He's such a creative force. I think at one point I told Matt, I was like, well, if you have to fire one of us, you should probably keep Chris. And again, that's just one thing that you have to realize. And when you're working in that environment is like, there's just people that are just more talented than you. And he's always, he was always the one who was more talented.
I think a lot of people saw his character that he would use on the Rooster Teeth podcast and would overlook the tremendous talent he clearly has.
No, he's money. Like, it's a shame too. Like, I wish, he always had like movies he wanted Rooster Teeth to make, and it was a shame that they never, greenlit it. I think the decision making over what to invest in was always very puzzling once Full Screen got involved. So it's a shame that no one got to see that.
How common was that for things that you guys wanted to have made not get greenlit, and what was that like on your end?
We didn't get to decide what got greenlit. I think in 2008 or 9, I pitched. It was called First.com, and it was basically a tech startup. Of like a small tech company that's like trying to make it and build it. And, obviously they didn't go with it. And then Silicon Valley came out. And I will say Silicon Valley. Like, yeah. So I pitched, the thing though is mine was like a period piece. It was like set in 1995, like a tech company going against AOL. It wasn't set in the current day. And so that was more, Silicon Valley was definitely better, but it was frustrating looking back because I was like, and that's why I think like one of the things that I thought I was good at, which may be harder to appreciate, is understanding things, that concepts in a way that I think would resonate with people and would work well. Like there was one example where like I had to fight for this short. because everyone was like looking at the script and they're like, well, it's not there. I'm like, I know it's not there, but like it'll be there. Like the edit will work. And it was the snapshots one, the dick pic short.
Shaft shots. Yeah.
Shaft shots. I think it was Fabella's idea, and I was like, we're making this.
That was
and
hilarious.
Then I think Matt and Chris were like, they didn't get it as much or see it as much, especially in the script. And I was like, it'll play. You just don't get to decide what the company invests in. Like so much of my life was getting directions from up top of what I had to do, and then trying to sell it to my team, who would then push back on me. So you kind of had like a force from above and a force from below, both pushing against you, and you just kind of have to make it work.
Can you talk about the difference in the content creation landscape back then to today? I mean, at least as you know it today.
I mean, really, everything is just kind of shifted because of, Instagram and TikTok and Facebook video, and then now YouTube is shifted too. I kind of tell people like and I don't mean just Rooster Teeth. When I say we, I mean all of the late 2000s, early 2010 YouTube creators, Smosh, iJustine, basically, all of those peeps, right? We collectively created influencing and influencer culture. We created like and subscribe and all of this shit, right? Like we built that from nothing. And then these big corporate companies came in and they took all of the things that we were building that required, like, professional expertise in post-production and graphics work. And they built these apps that would basically take that, syntax that we built and democratize it and make it so anybody off the street can do the same thing. So at the point in time where you allow everyone to creatively build what you're building, then you kind of become beholden to the lowest common denominator, which is why I think now everything is, there's no build up. There's no catalyst. You have to go right to the second act. You have to get right into it. And I think there's so much that's lost from that. But that is the style now, and there's no changing that. They don't want the song and dance. They just want to see you kick the guy in the balls immediately. They don't care about what got this guy in that situation in the first place. It's all fueled by the swiping and the instant dopamine, because the dopamine is more important than the art, the appreciation for the art.
Being from kind of the old school here, have you tried to write anything more focused towards the current way people are taking in content?
When Bernie bought the IP back, I didn't know what was going to be there. So I wrote a few short ideas in case there was ever an opportunity. And I think that was one of them. It's basically it's like a self-aware Instagram video that plays into the expectation that it's going to be, there's no start to it or there's no end to it. It might be a little too similar to the Inception video that we did, which I think was probably a little ahead of its time. I think Bernie wrote that one, and it's really how there's no beginning and end. You jump right into it at the middle of it. So it's just a different landscape now, and it's a shame how kind of bastardized influencing has become, because when we were talking about things that we really liked, it was because we really liked them, whereas now you have these giant commercial agencies that are producing really shitty production value in order to recreate something that looks authentic. So you're creating inauthentic authenticity in order to make it look like something that we built and that people really resonated with people. So and that's one of the frustrations I've had post Rooster Teeth, is just you put too much time into stuff and it just doesn't hit. And so you're just kind of well, what am I doing with my time? Who am I doing this for? If you're not gonna have that kind of consumption, then why am I doing this?
What was the vibe as somebody who was a single digit employee when the company sold?
Um, it was strange. That conversation, that was like really when I was not on the inside on that at all. That became the first indication that, okay, I am no longer in this inner circle. I'm no longer a part of like, the future management of this company. I knew nothing about it. I knew, the opportunity to be able to do more things is obviously really interesting and intriguing. And so but I was skeptical. Like I was definitely not a true believer. But I also didn't have equity in the company. So like if I would have had equity, I would have been like, yeah, let's sell this motherfucker. So I would have not sold the company if it were me, unless I also was a co-owner, and then 100% I would have sold the company because that was such a unique opportunity in time. We were in the post recession economic recovery. We've had decades of deregulation that have allowed small groups of people to make a lot of money.
I think a lot of fans want to know, oh, what did the company think? Like, I think it was a terrible idea to sell all that. But you had a really personal reaction where you said you realized you weren't on the inner circle. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I just think like, at that point, like I had like, it'd become clear maybe that I didn't have the maturity or, the management skills to be able to really take the company where it was going to go. There are times like and like that's my biggest feeling as a failure is as a manager of people. I think like I should have been better, and I think there were like things I look back on where I was like, that's an example of a shitty manager, and it like I still think about it, and it still haunts me to a degree. And I think and so like I think at some point it was like, okay, this guy is not going to be taking over the company. He just doesn't have that factor, that thing. And then that was like, when it became like very clear, like I'm no longer really the future of where this company is going to go. When I look back and I want to enjoy everything from the company, but I do think about the people that I failed or, the people that it didn't work out with, or people who just, we had negative experiences with each other. And it sucks to feel like I could have been someone's like negative experience because I was, overstressed as a manager or I just didn't have the management skills that I needed. So that was like, really where it became apparent, like I am not part of where this company is going on a big sense. It was really clear at that point. It goes back to what I was saying before about like, the performance not working, you start to struggle, and then it makes your work worse, right? Because you're also not getting paid that much, because like the company never really paid well aside from like a couple years like when the acquisition happened.
Are you comfortable saying what your salary was around this time?
Yeah, I think the highest my annual salary ever went was like 65, but there were like 2 years with the acquisition, like it did go above 100, which I felt like was a good reflection of where I was at. And then with selling it, we did get equity in full screen. So altogether, I made, I think, $75,000 on the sale of Rooster Teeth, which at the time was a lot. But like looking back on it and all of I contributed, it's definitely not
Not
it's definitely
indicative.
one of those things. No, not indicative, but it's the reality, and it's hard for people to understand that the time with the way the economy was is you were just lucky to have a job. I think you underestimate the quality of work you get when people are being paid more and being paid well. But I will say that there were a couple years where I was paid well, and I was happy with that.
On the subject of salary and pay, there were those Glassdoor reviews that came out. Do you have any inside knowledge on those or any background? Was it a lot about pay? My perception was always that people maybe came in and volunteered a lot of extra time hoping they would get a job down the line. and it just didn't work out.
So everyone everyone got paid. They just didn't get paid well. I think maybe when we first started out and we didn't necessarily know what we were doing, like we had some people who would like volunteer, but eventually we realized like, no, we're going to pay you. We're not going to pay you well, but you'll at least get like a minimum wage. The exception was interns, who got school credit. That was mostly unpaid. And they might've started paying eventually because, eventually you start to realize like, okay, no, this is kind of ridiculous. But we did hire a tremendous amount of interns to full-time jobs. I mean, a ton, like probably a 10 or 12. And I'm sure there's that effect that like, I need to work as hard as I can in order to get this job and this opportunity. And that's like definitely not, an element that I'm proud of, the legacy that we left with that. I tried not to exploit people, but I'm sure there's someone out there that's like, I feel exploited, and I feel really sorry about that. I wish we were all making more money. But at the same time, like everyone really enjoyed doing the work because it was like a dream to be able to do that stuff. But you still need to be able to pay your bills. You still need to be able to do all this other things. So I wish we would have paid people better. And, I definitely like feel for anyone who felt, exploited, but, in live action, we definitely worked a lot and worked more than we should have, but not every department worked the same. I think the contractor issue was above board, but it maybe wasn't necessarily ethical. Well, I mean, when you hire a contractor, it's not by hour, it's per job. But then, you have to meet the deadline. It's basically crunch culture. And it definitely was not a Rooster Teeth isolated issue. This is something that was a part of the film industry, the visual effects industry, and the gaming industry. So we were basically doing the same thing that everyone did, which doesn't make it right or ethical, but it wasn't necessarily unique to Rooster Teeth. But it was definitely not something that you're proud about looking back on it. Because I think when you hire a contractor, you're not paying them by the hour, you're paying them for the job. And then if they have to work more to get stuff done, they work more to get stuff done. I feel like we, on live action, always tried to be as respectful as we could, but everyone still there worked a shit ton. But there were times, where like, in like meetings, like the whole company, I would hear something like, oh, everyone needs to look at what animation is doing, and other departments should strive, to be like that. And I always felt it was kind of a dig on me and what I was doing.
Yeah.
Well, but then like years later, when all those Glassdoor things came out, it's like, well, yeah, we didn't put out as much stuff, and maybe there was a reason for that.
Did you feel vindicated by that a little bit?
Yeah, I felt vindicated by that. But at the same time, that doesn't make you feel good because so many people, are communicating things that really hurt them, and that sucks. And then too, like I'm sure there's a ton of people who worked in live action that felt like, no, we worked way too much, and they were right. They were right. We were all trying to basically get things done to hit our deadlines with the resources we had. And so, we would work pretty insane hours. There were times where I'd work like every day for, a couple months, where we were there, we slept at the office, and, we definitely loved what we were doing, and it was really cool to create that. And, I don't have the same feelings that a lot of those people who wrote those things do, but I feel for them, and it makes me, it definitely shades, how I feel about the company and the legacy that we had, that you want to make a positive influence on people, and it just sucks that you don't always do that, and you feel like you failed them. But I think overall, and the industry is much improved. The video game industry, I know Rooster Teeth changed a lot after that, and they made a lot of really great adjustments. And I think I do think that's definitely a credit to the people who are in charge. It's just like in the moment you really do kind of get all consumed about hitting your deadlines, getting your stuff done, and making it as good as possible, and you kind of lose sight of the human element, and you don't necessarily realize that not everyone might be comfortable saying something about it. You just assume like everyone's good with it, and again, it goes back to like, you know, those management things that I wish I would have been, you know, better at. And I hope I'm glad things got better, and I hope I'm sure everybody, you know, learned something from it and took something from it. You know, I know I did.
On the subject of some controversies, do you have anything you'd like to tell people who were maybe big Joel fans, who I know I've seen the story change almost every time a fan retells it? I mean, do you have anything to offer them, the fans of Joel, to what happened?
You know, it's just, you know, you just get a little, it just becomes harder and harder and harder the longer you're with, you know, a certain place and company. And, you know, I think he and I were similar, and that we were not happy, you know, at the company. And, you know, it just becomes a bigger challenge. You know, it just becomes a bigger challenge. And I don't want to speak too much, you know, because I think, you know, I want to respect Joel's privacy, but
Yeah.
you know, the company expands so much, you know, there's just not as much for everybody. So I don't know. I mean, I do love Joel. I haven't talked to him in years, but I do love, like, you know, every second I spent working with him and doing the show with him.
With you leaving the company, can you talk about where your mental state was at that time? What you kind of went through with leaving the company?
Well, they decided for me. I was officially laid off
Okay.
in October 2018. So yeah, it's tough. So basically, backtrack to like 2015. Monty goes into the hospital, and I spent like every night in the hospital, you know, with Sheena and Dan and I think Sonia, you know, his friends and his wife, right? And that was 10 days or so, you know, and I was with him. You know, when he passed, and then afterward, I had to, you know, I was building Blu-rays for his memorial and trying to help coordinate and plan the funeral. So it was like a lot to deal with. It was a lot of emotional baggage, right? And then, you know, everything would have been fine, but then I broke my hand like a month or two later, and then they were like, "Well, you might need surgery, and it's going to cost like $2,000." Because that's how insurance works in this country. You
Yeah,
still
unfortunately.
costs you a lot of money. The story
Yeah.
I'm going to tell is going to be relatable to a lot of people, but like,
Mhm.
they're like, well, it's like a slight fracture. It was like the hook of the hamate. It was like a bone in my hand, right? And they're like, it could just heal on itself, and then we can give you pain meds to manage. So they gave me tramadol, which is a synthetic
Yeah.
opioid. Now, if he would have been like, you can go to a corner and buy heroin, and then maybe it'll be better, I would have just, you know, gone into debt and got the surgery. But, you know,
Sure.
the connotation behind prescription painkillers was just so much different than it is off of street opioids. But then that kind of started, along with the increasing dose of the medication I mentioned earlier, like a kind of like a negative feedback loop of dependency. So when I started using the opioids while I was waiting for my hand to heal, like there was like a short I just botched. Like it was harder for me to deal with stress, and I like botched it. And I think that's when they started getting like worried about me and performance wise. And then
Okay.
go ahead.
I was going to ask, I mean, how did, if you don't mind expanding, how did you, like, what does botching it mean for you?
We just had so much going on, and I just kept putting it on the back burner until it became clear like there was just not enough time to get this thing done, and it was like sponsored. So we ended up getting it done, and we ended up writing it and shooting it and editing it in a few days, but it was just definitely like a huge black mark on me. You know, but I was, you know, medicated, and then you know, dealing with that other medication as well. And then eventually I did get the my hand surgically fixed, but then I would have this issue with an inability to handle stress, and the only way I could deal with it was taking like 1 or 2 of these pills, and then I could get like my work done. So that became like a multi-year like crutch off of like those kind of painkillers. And the problem is it works, but then you keep dulling your dopamine sensors. So then it becomes harder and harder to focus and harder to get your stuff done. You actually become more dependent on that medication. So it just like affected like my mood, because most of the time like I wasn't using it, but then what I realize now is I was going through an element of withdrawal. So I was like, maybe more moodier or maybe harder to deal with. Like, I don't know. And I was also like not happy, with the company in a few ways. And so like eventually like I lost my role managing live action. Mostly though, it makes sense because the company wanted to scale, right? And the way that I ran things just did not scale. They wanted to be a factory. So I was going to go off and start working on my own stuff. Will Hyde, who's a great guy, took over. And when I hired him, that was kind of, I think we all knew that was what was going to happen. Like we talk about money is always a huge issue. Like I had to hire him for like significantly more money than I was making. And I was like, okay, so I'm hiring someone and paying them more and they're supposed to be under me. So like the writing's on the wall, and so, and then my performance was just suffering. So it made sense to have him take over. But it still kind of hurt or sucked, but it was the right call.
Yeah.
It was the right move. I 100% agree with it. And, they went and I think they made that movie Bloodfest, which was a big accomplishment.
Yeah.
And it's just luck, it didn't hit, but they were able to accomplish a lot. And I think everybody was ready for me to move on. Cause I assume I just got like, more jaded and less like, less happy with my job. So I think that the team was happier, that I moved and did something else. And I thought, Will did a great job. And, it's just, if they had more luck, the movie would have done better and they would have kept making those things, but it's just movie making is hard. You don't know what's going to hit. You don't know what's going to work well. So then I went off on and started working on, my own or like independent projects. But like would run into like similar roadblocks. There was a pilot I was working on, and then Full Screen had one idea of what they wanted the vision, and then the chief creative and stakeholder for the show wanted the exact opposite, and I was kind of in the middle, and I didn't know how to deal with that, and so I just kept like trying to buy more time, to try to find a solution, and there was just no solution there. And so that was like, it didn't, that was another one that didn't work out. And then like these things just start weighing on you, right? And then we did Joel's show, which I thought was tough because we had Full Screen lawyers like were like looking at all our scripts and like deleting like half of it because they were so risk averse.
Right.
So we were dealing with like not being able to talk about anyone or anything or show anything because it was, it would have been a lot different if we could have worked with Warner Brothers lawyers, but we couldn't. And then we were shooting 3 episodes a week in front of a live audience, and like my stress level was maxed. So I like delegated the editorial reviews to like someone from that industry. And I don't think that was necessarily the best move. And so I think, it ultimately affected the way the show was bought or viewed because it just wasn't as a big success. And I really think that with a second season, it could have been something because for anyone who went and saw it, we were not shooting at the Rooster Teeth Studios. Like I built my own office with my own editorial suite, my own editors, my producers. And then we built out a studio near it in South Austin with a whole crew. So we basically built a second production arm of Rooster Teeth that could have kept making stuff, but I think like I just didn't have the ability to generate enough trust in order to get more stuff, and I think that's just maybe a lack of experience, but definitely like it had to do with my emotional struggles, and this is where I kept going up on that medication to help with depression, which was then making my memory worse. So you just kind of have this like negative feedback loop until eventually you just kind of crash. And that's kind of what happened to me at the beginning of 2018, where I remember telling, someone at the company that I was talking to, I was like, there's something wrong with me and I don't know what it is. And I'm sure that sounded like an excuse, but it was true. And then I decided that I was going to discontinue cold turkey ever taking a prescription opioid again, because I think I finally figured out that it was possible that the thing that I thought was making it possible for me to get my work done, which it was, ultimately though was the thing that you think is helping you stay afloat is actually dragging you down deeper, right? So I was like, I'm going to stop doing that cold turkey, and then also stop the Lamictal cold turkey. And so if you're wondering what that's like, Google, Reddit, withdrawal Lamictal or lamotrigine. I can't pronounce it. That's the generic term. And then Reddit, like tramadol withdrawal. And so you can learn about both of those withdrawals. And I was doing them both at the same time. And that was, it was tough. And so like, I couldn't go to work. Like I couldn't leave my house to deal with the stress. So then that obviously created an issue until eventually they're like, you need to tell us what's going on. And I was like, I'll be okay. I'll be fine. Because again, you're so consumed by shame that it masks your ability to ask for help and be transparent. And plus, like, you're worried. You're like, well, they're never going to like give me another thing if they think I'm like this liability. But then like eventually they were like ready to just have enough. And then I fessed up and I'm like, look, I'm getting on antidepressants. I had to get off this other medication and I was like dependent on these prescription opioids. So I went on a 3-month hiatus. So it was paid for a month or 6 weeks and then unpaid for 2 months or 6 weeks. I forget exactly. And then that allowed me to get through the withdrawal period and give some time for the antidepressant to start working. And then they had to bring me back, I think, by federal law. Like you can't be fired at that point. But then, it's tough. And then I was in a position where I'm like, well, I'm not going to pitch anything. I'm going to work my ass off and see where this is going to go. Because my goal was to come back, whatever they needed me to do, I would do it. And hopefully I could get a year's worth of work and then jump to somewhere else in Warner Brothers. But I came back and they had me, I was working under Patrick in the broadcast division, and they had me take over running Sports Ball. So I came in on season 2 of Sports Ball and like episode 5 or 6 and, started producing and working with Tyler on the creative, eventually doing editorial and working with the social media person for promotional clips. And I was really happy. I thought I did a really good job and work, but I think at that point it had just been too much with the company. And I think they were ready to move on. And I don't blame them one bit. They could have fired me a million times, so they canceled the show and they laid me off. And that was that, I was thankful for the ability to come back and try to, build something. I wish it would have lasted longer, but at the same time, that's when the financial struggles of the company started. The entire game dev team was also being laid off at that time. And then the parent company had announced like 20% layoff across the board at Warner Media. So, if you're going to have to fire people, what's fair? Like you have someone who's like, yeah, you're OG, but if you look at their contributions in the last year, is it really fair to keep them and fire, one of these good, hardworking, kids, so I get it. I definitely get it. But it reminded me a lot of that if you watch Mad Men, when Don Draper comes back and he has to take a remedial position, working under people, and he has to just suck it up and he just works through it. That's what it was, because I just wanted to be able to work again in a mental space where I could, really get the stuff done that I wanted to get done. And I was happy with the stuff we did on Sports Ball season 2. I thought there was a lot of real fun bits. But it wasn't working, people weren't watching. And so, it was one of those things like you get, and I have no ill will over, anyone at the company, about it. But yeah, I was technically, laid off, at that point.
What's up, guys? It's Floppy here. This is a good intermission point if you want to get a snack or a drink. Brandon gave me a ton of time. We actually ended up breaking after this, and we came back a few days later to do some pickups and kind of finish out everything. So the footage going forward isn't going to have any of Brandon's video, but it will have a lot of clips and videos that he was either featured in or was very integral behind the camera in directing or writing. So if you notice a shift in tone going forward, that's why. All right. Thanks, guys. All right, Brandon, I'm curious. Can you tell me again, what year did you become the head of live action?
Well, I guess when we started hiring people, like when we had Chris, Marshall, and Carrie, so that would have been around 2010 or so. We started to make it the whole department a little bit more specialized, and then slowly started growing from there. So I guess from 2010 to the end of 2015.
How does that job change from 2010 to 2015? I mean, what were your responsibilities kind of the same? What were you dealing with, like especially pre-buyout and post-buyout?
Well, the scale started getting bigger. What was interesting is, we were almost more efficient as a small team. Like Chris, Carrie, Marshall, and I, we were in a rhythm where we were doing one video a week, from writing to shooting to producing, editing. So as the team got bigger, it actually got almost slower and harder to get things done. And as we were also working on other things in the company, because we didn't just do live action. So we would get random pings from every single department about things that they needed help with that we would have to take on, from promotional videos to Red versus Blue. We would get pulled in to Red versus Blue, mostly compositing work, and or DVD work. I had to do a lot of the DVDs after Nathan left. It definitely shifted. So we were basically the in-house production for all of the company, where we could work on our stuff, but we also had other things. But then that would pose conflicts. Like I would, kind of get like I don't know what the right word is, but it's like, you're not getting enough done. I'm like, well, let's stop giving me other shit that you need me to do for other people and taking my, my people away to work on shit. So it just became more and more stressful, really. The stress just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and that increased tenfold after the full screen acquisition. They wanted scale so much. I was so behind in my hiring, and I'm like, I don't want to just hire 100 people and I was very much more slow. Let's be meticulous and careful. And at that point, the company was like, go, 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 go. It became a lot harder to manage.
How much of your day-to-day work life was adding to the stress? Like, was it a fun place to work pre-buyout, post-buyout? Like, what was that emotion like?
It's always a fun place to work, for sure. The tone and the mood was always great. It was really like we try to capture that in the RT life. But what, people have to remember is it was also a company, so you do have like those traditional responsibilities and expectations, having to take, things from both above me and below me and make them work, and no one being happy. One of the best examples is, we were I forget what we were mostly working on. I mean, shorts, I guess. But we had to produce stuff for Colton's Done show. And it was like, you'll just take a short and you'll give it to us and they'll do it earlier. And I'm like, okay. So we did this thing I thought was fun and cool, that we brought in these 2 female directors for. It was like this playing around, giving giving people like these sex toys that they had never seen before and try to make sense of it. And they're like, this isn't a short. And I'm like, who cares? It's a video and it's entertaining. And, you know, you just kind of have to tell your team under you, like, you know, guys, this is just what it is. And then they would tell you what you already know. That itself, you know, was stressful.
So you're talking about this stress. I know you said you were head of live action up till 2015, but you didn't leave the company for a few years after that. Can you talk about that transition out of the head of live action?
It was a fast transition.
Okay.
I mean, it'd be like, you know, I talked a little before about my, after Monty died, I got kind of hooked on pills, and it made me like just a little bit more forgetful. It made it harder for me to deal with the stress. So like, I think like the writing was on the wall that I would not be running live action long term, and I could see that. But everything kind of hit on the head on the holiday commercial for that year. I think it was the December 2015 holiday commercial. I wasn't producing it. I was, you know, just very much overseeing. And then I saw like the budget, and I lost it. I was like, what the fuck are we doing here? Because like there was like one line item was like $23,000, and that doesn't even include all of the other hard costs or the soft costs. And, you know, the point of these videos was to make a web video that would cause people to go to the RT store and buy more merchandise, right? The measure of success for that is not how much do we sell for Christmas, because we're going to sell no matter what. It's how many people watch this specific video, and because of this video bought more stuff. That's not a huge number, because this video is going to get maybe 300,000 views before the shipping deadline. I mean, I hated making house ads. I hated it. But, you know, you do it because our department made like no money. Like shorts makes no money. Like the DVD sales are going to be lower than animation. They're going to be, and you know, we're not going to sell as much merch as either animation or Achievement Hunter. It's like we have to float under the accounting radar. But the thing that I didn't see at the time that I can see now is like, I think what they were going for, two things. One, maybe showing that we could make something up level that is more in tune visually with a larger production house, maybe could yield more opportunity. And the other thing is, this was when, you know, they were trying to build up valuation for the full screen parent company, because the goal was always, once we were acquired, to get acquired again, right? So you have to increase perceived valuation. And so I didn't see it at the time, but something like, you know, money in, money out was less important, because we're trying to increase the perceived valuation. So when we were eventually purchased completely by AT&T, you know, the purchase price would be higher. And this is speculation on my part.
Sure.
So I think it's a combination of those two things. All I saw was just wasting money. And that's became it clear to everybody that I wasn't the person to, you know, really see this through, because like, you know, it led to like a real butting of heads between me and some other important people. And then so they stayed and I left. That was a decision. And, you know, I get it. I mean, again, I knew that was coming. It was kind of like a way for me to make my last stand, principally, because my contention at the time then was, this is not going to last forever. We're all going to get fired. While I do think that's true, there was a possibility that, you know, something could have been very successful and that wouldn't have happened, you know? So that maybe I was being pessimistic. That ultimately left to me being removed from that role and given like kind of one-off projects to go fuck around with on my own. But again, that was a pessimistic view on my part. It you know, it could have been a 50-50 chance that one of those big projects would have worked out. You know, they just didn't, because you have to be lucky.
Did you kind of feel alone in this, like someone's going to look at this eventually and we're going to have a problem?
Yeah, I felt completely alone in that sense. I was just very, you know, protective of my department and people. I was risk averse. I don't want to hire a bunch of people quickly. I want to be very careful about who we bring in. I don't want to expand too fast, you know, so I was just more risk averse. And I just had a mindset that we're running a business. And that's why I say that this isn't a Rooster Teeth problem. And in order to understand what happened to Rooster Teeth, you have to tell a bigger story about corporate culture and the culture of mergers and acquisitions. It's happening even as we speak now, because there is so much financial incentive for people high up in companies to merge. You just make so much money for yourself during these processes, because essentially, if you're buying someone, the valuation of your company can go up, and you're probably a public company, and that's a lot in stock. Or if you're being bought, it means, if you own equity in the company, a big cash out there. What no one seems to care about, what I cared about, was the debt that creates. And I don't know if Rooster Teeth was a leveraged buyout or not, but leveraged buyouts, I think, are, the scourge of the earth. Basically, someone decides they want to buy your company, but part of the money they're using to buy your company is going to be a bill that your company has to pay from that point forward. So essentially, you've taken some of your profits and you're now using it to pay the previous people who own the company. Like, debt is one of those things that it's easy not to think about at the moment, but it always comes calling. And we see it time and time again, when that debt eventually comes to call, like it did for Discovery and Warner Brothers, it'll take its weight in skin and blood. Again, there was always a chance that it could have worked out. It's just something had to hit.
Luck.
But you just needed luck. But the horror movie wasn't a hit. Laser Team did okay. Laser Team 2 was not a hit. The animated show that they put a lot of stock into with Macy Williams, Genlock, not a huge hit. Not a light the fire on earth.
Right. Not hit. A fun to other projects hit.
Yeah, not a fun to other projects hit. So I think that attitude definitely was there, but and if it was there before, it might have been just after I left live action, I built my own department, and for the Joel show, we had over 100 people working on that in South Austin, completely separate from the company. I was basically running a subsidiary, which I loved, and I wanted to continue, and I pitched continuing it, but they were like, no, and I was like, all right.
Can you talk a little bit more about how it impacted you to be, I'm not trying to minimalize it, but basically being the Chicken Little is what it seems like, of the live action department, saying like, look, we gotta be careful. This could all fall out. Like, how much was that affecting you mentally? And then did that go away when you were no longer the head of live action, or did that just kind of stick in the back of your mind the whole time?
Well, first, let me just say, I want to make sure it's clear that it's not like I was the only reason they got rid of me from live action was because of this. Like, I had my own, failures at that point. I was jaded, with the company. I missed that commercial deadline or whatever. So I want to make sure it's not a Brandon as a victim here. He wasn't. It was something that I kept in my mind, like, that this is just unacceptable risk behavior and they're going to just do whatever. But like, nobody really cared, or no one agreed. Everyone was just so happy to have all of their stuff funded. And that's how I knew that it was definitely time for me to go. Like, no one came up to me and was like, oh man, I wish you were still here. And I was like, because that tells you a lot. It tells you like, you're not the leader that you wanted to be. And that they like the way the new direction is going. And so I was happy for them. And I just kind of had to like try not to focus on it and like pick up my pride, and then focus on doing something, new and different. After that, like, I really had no real idea what was going on in the company. Like, at the point, I kind of was no longer a manager, or I stopped attending the management meetings, and just tried to focus on, what I had on my plate. And happy for everyone else to do all the stuff that they were doing. Fallout Immersion was my last immersion. And I thought, aside from the Warthog immersion, thought they did, a great job with the show and everything. And, everything I thought they were doing they seemed to really enjoy and take a lot of pride in. So I thought, the department seemed to go well, after that, which I was happy for.
Putting myself in that situation, I don't know where my mental health would have been at the time. You're talking about it with a lot of clarity now. Obviously, we're a
that's where the
decade
pills
out.
come in.
Okay, okay, yeah.
That is the unfortunate part of opioids. Is it does become like a place where you can you can get a little bit of a reprieve.
So you're just working on independent projects from early 2016 to 2019 then?
Yeah, it was the Joel Show, a pilot for Slow Mo Guys, and a lot of commercial video work with GameStop. A ton of those projects and videos. So I was flying across the country. I think that was maybe 2017, and 2016 was mostly the Joel Show. Yeah, I mean, I still did a lot of work. I was definitely around, but I was not part of any. I wasn't part of anything or any group. I would just see people, and it always felt. It like the awkwardness I don't think ever left. It's just like, and it could have been in my head, that I project that, but like, you see when people see you walk by, they think, oh, there's that guy. And you're like, oh, I'm fucking that guy. I never wanted to be that guy.
Oh man.
But like, again, you're just like, you're always going to be in a place as a consequence of choices that you make, so it's just having to remind yourself of that. You can't really get mad at anyone else for, like the things that, you weren't able to deliver on.
Did you have a lot of passion for the projects you were doing in that time? Was there, I mean, you talked about the Joel Show, you seemed really amped by that. Were you not going through the motions, but were you kind of just doing your job, or did you still have the passion for what you were doing?
Yeah, I completely had the passion. The passion like sort of died out like at the end of 2017 and early in 2018. It was a bummer that the Joel Show it never, it didn't take off, and there was no talk of a second season, because I thought, like, again, we learned so much and we could be so much better. There weren't as many commercial spots, so it was just kind of like I didn't really have. There wasn't a lot of opportunity, and they were probably in a position ready, hoping that I would just move on by myself. Matt never stopped being supportive and pitching options and stuff, that's why I tremendous, love for everybody at the company. I mean, again, there's maybe 5 people that I did not like at the entire company.
And now Brandon's going to name all 5, starting with his.
No, of course not. Because I know, it's like, if I were to do that, they could, they would tell stories about me being, difficult, and they wouldn't be wrong. It's no one's fault. Work can be hard, and some people can be better at dealing with disagreements than others. I don't think I was one to take things personally, except when people made work personal. That got annoying. But other than that, I mean, it was a weird time at the company, but really after I left live action, I really was detached from pretty much everyone at the company.
Did you see a lot, or did you see or feel a lot of competition within the departments, like closer to that 2017, 2018 time? I mean, I know there was that video game that was getting made, a million different shows. Like, were people was everybody in sync? I mean, in sync on their different projects, or was there like, this show needs to do better than this other show?
No, I mean, I think everyone was supportive of everyone else, but everyone was just focused on their own stuff. Like there wasn't a lot of competition between departments. I don't think, obviously everybody wanted, funding and stuff, but I think mostly everybody was very social with each other. The parties were always very fun and amicable, and I didn't ever get a sense of anything was like cutthroat and like, I'll fucking kill you, anything like that. Like you could roll your eyes, at some things, like the way that like certain departments were put on a pedestal. So like, I suppose it's definitely like at worst internal eye rolling at different things. But other than that is a really supportive place, because everybody was kind of inspired by work everyone else was doing. It was really cool to see all of these new things, and all of a sudden we have to change the idea of what this company is. Now it's a video game company. Now it's a 2D animation company. So like all of this, stuff was I think the idea of it was all really cool. And everybody, like for the most part, everybody was just really, really nice, to each other, and good to each other. At least that was my perspective. But obviously, everyone sees things differently and has different experiences.
What's something from that era that, like, what are you most proud of from that 2015 to 2019 spot? Would you say it's the Joel Show, or was there a one-off that you did that you really liked?
As the achievement for the Joel Show, I thought was really cool and really awesome. Like just to go from nothing, and not having the help of, really anyone aside from Marcus did a tremendous job on the set. Absolutely beautiful work. Marcus and his team, production design on it was phenomenal. Other than him, though, it was just mostly we built everything from scratch. That was very very cool. And I was also really happy with like coming in at the end and taking over Sports Ball and trying to like find ways to make it fun, even if it only lasted 6 or 7 episodes. I think I came in on like episode 5 or 6 or something, but like every episode we were trying to do something different. Sports Ball season 2.
Oh, season 2? Okay.
Yeah. And that's funny. It's because like I knew that the show was just not hitting and resonating, and I could feel like the vibes were shaky and with everything. So we had like a week hiatus because of a holiday, and then we're like, all right, we're going to record. We're supposed to come back and record next Tuesday. And I was like, I don't know, something's off, something's different. And then like we got a meeting put on our calendar.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, guys, let's table this because I think it's possible I could be getting fired tomorrow. So told and see, and everyone was like, "Oh, you're just joking." I'm like, "No, I think this might be serious." So then, like, I went to John Mace, and I was like, "John, I need you to know where where all of my camera stuff is, because I had used this DSLR, this I think the 1DC 4K camera since the Joel show for like everything. It's like I need you to know where all this stuff is, just in case I'm not here." Like tomorrow, or I don't know how many days I had noticed, 1 or 2 days from now, and I was like, I think this is it. And then I pinged, I think Patrick and Glenn. I was like, hey, is this the kind of meeting where I'm gonna like need a box or whatever? So like everyone knew I knew, and so when we went into it, and it became very clear immediately what it was. I was like, okay. No, it's cool. I've already processed this. And then so like I came back and I told like I think the broadcast people, and they thought I was joking at first. I was like, no, it's all right. We're canceling Sports Ball and we're letting you're being laid off. And I was like, all right. And it's just funny because like I knew it was, and I was telling people that that's what it was going to be. Because I think like it got delayed an extra day, so I was like, oh my god. But yeah, so but it was everything was very amicable and cool, and again I have no ill will towards anyone. It was just funny because like I was telling everyone like what is going to happen, and like I'd be like, this is where stuff is. You need to find this here, and surreal's I think probably the best word for it.
I'm sorry you had to go out with Sports Ball. That's one hell of a way to go out.
Yeah, it was like a no-win situation. Like it was from a production standpoint. It was kind of like I don't know why they brought it back. I think it might have been some kind of like fundraiser thing. I don't know why, but it definitely felt like the thing that no one wanted. Like it's like the unwinnable challenge. But I hit it with the best I could, and I put in like my best effort, and I was proud of what we did and the changes and stuff. Like I gotta dress up in a giant lobster outfit and take a fall, which I love doing, physical comedy. So that was fun. And we did all this goofy stuff at the beginning of the videos, and it's fun. And we brought in Joel and Jack, and I think Jeff for an episode 2 to just try to like change things up. So it's funny that that's the one I went down with, but I was still happy with the time I spent there, and especially working with that broadcast team. Everyone was just so talented.
And when you get handed a show like that, I mean, are you a sports guy? Was that in your wheelhouse?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I'm a big sports guy. Baseball, football. I'm getting into soccer just because we have a soccer team now. I would not say I'm a huge, very knowledgeable with soccer, but football, baseball, basketball. I've gone to more games than I can count, and unfortunately, I care about how my teams do. So it was a natural fit, and I worked on season 1 as well. So I thought it was good, and it was just tough trying to make that work on the Rooster Teeth network. Ideally that would have been a show on ESPN that would have been produced by Rooster Teeth.
When you said you got involved with it, my initial reaction was that you'd be like, oh my god, how am I going to make this work for this fan base? I mean, did you have any of that, or are you just straight into work mode with it?
My focus was just make something that you think is good, make something that you think is entertaining, and let the chips fall where they may, but at that same point, Tyler and I were still doing all of the social media for it. So I was making all of the social media clips, and we had hired a contractor to run that social media account because we had our own dedicated sports ball Twitter account. And I think at the time that was one of, I don't know how many different shows had it, but it's like, look, we can't have one post once a week. We need to build momentum and build social media following with specific like memes and stuff. So we would do a lot of memes, polls. And then I was just making a lot of like social media video excerpts that we were pushing out there and trying to make, the show more successful. So it was really just like, not think big picture, and I can't control how many people watch. Hopefully the marketing team is marketing it, but I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did their best. It was really just like, let's make this as good as we can.
Now that, people are probably on their way back from the bathroom, unfortunately, during the sports ball discussion, hopefully they at least pause the video, but yeah, it was a fun show, but it's really cool you worked on it. I'm glad you get to have that notch in your belt, I guess. When you're leaving Rooster Teeth, what is that like? Walking out of there, what's your first plans that you're making?
It's just a lot to process. They were like, you can stop coming in whenever, but your last day is like the end of the year. So I worked for 2 more weeks making social clips for the Joel show, because eventually it was gonna come back. Rooster Teeth was gonna get the rights again and could start releasing it. So I basically made social media highlight clips for like all 24 episodes. And then once I had finished that and turned that over to the marketing department, then I was done. I think before Thanksgiving break, I got all my stuff late one night, and I was like, all right, this is the last time I'm ever going to be here. And that was it. It was cool. Like, I was trying to focus on like what I could like, basically build from scratch. I had built so much at Rooster Teeth, and had done so much, creating like new departments and new shows, that I wanted to create something that I could own. It was just a lot harder, in the long run than I thought it would be. So I started my own company, and unfortunately we had like a new house. So I didn't have a lot of extra money to spend on help. So I had to do everything myself. I like underestimated how much of a mental and emotional toll that would take, because like when you're worried about every facet of the business, it's hard to focus on like something like editing, when you have so much other else on your mind. And so eventually, my big regret is just not having more capital to where I could have hired help, because like it just became too much for me to keep going, especially with like just ongoing feelings of like, oh, everything's going to fail. There's no way going with it. So, I did launch a few podcasts, one on my 90 Day Fiance, which was really fun, but just didn't catch on. And another one, with, 2 of my, close personal friends, Billy and Keisha, called Wrong Side of 30. And that one did well. The struggle was always just me, like, kind of getting out of its way and being consistent with it. But eventually, they have to focus on their careers, and it's just very difficult to have like an open podcast and also have a job in corporate America, so I'd love to come back and do another Wrong Side episode, but it's tough. But it was a really good experience. I think we did like 22 episodes of that show, and it was just kind of like us in that point of our lives transitioning, into as we were in our 30s and dealing with relationships and work and life. So it was a really good experience. But I think it's like when we launched the Patreon and started doing like weekly or monthly events, I just like mentally, like it was too much. And I think I just couldn't, kind of broke down, and then like, scheduling broke down, and everybody got busy with their own stuff. So it's just one of those things, like that's why it's tough. Like you need money in order to make money, so if I would have had a loan of some kind. Because the money I got from Rooster Teeth for the acquisition didn't last too long. Like I said, it was about like 70 grand or so. Yeah, it would have been nice for it to work out. And of course, COVID complicated things because I was focusing on podcasting because it was like cheap. And then COVID comes and now everyone's doing podcasting because no one can do anything else. So all of a sudden now your competition explodes tremendously. All of these celebrities started launching their own shows, and it's just competition for that time. And especially since with COVID, people weren't commuting, so people were listening less. So you have more competition and less consumption. And so it becomes very difficult to motivate yourself, especially when you're like, well, fuck, at some point I need to start pulling in money. But it was just too much to sustain. And especially given like all of these fucking additional podcasts launching. Like every week it was another punch in the gut. Like, this motherfucker should be in John Wick. Why does he have a podcast?
And just to be clear too, this is your last episode, I think, was 2022, Wrong Side of 30. Does that sound about right? So he's definitely not talking about any like Rooster Teeth level podcasts, like any of the those new people.
Yeah, all the celebrities. I mean, that all makes sense. They came in and they did the same thing I did, except more successful at it. So everybody like launched their Patreon and their own podcasts, and I'm really happy for them. Especially Chris and Barbara, Blaine, and that crew, and also like really proud of Eric and everything that he's built. Eric's always been like a stand-up great guy, really just like a gem of a dude. So I'm really happy to see how successful he's been and how well basically how well everyone's doing. Like I don't think there's a lot of bad blood within everybody. But I mean, then again, like I never knew the fucking gossip either. I was always on the outside. I didn't know the fucking shit. Clear. Yeah, like I didn't want to be a part of any of that. Especially after I left the company.
I think that's interesting too, because I mean, you kind of touched on it before, but like you were really the catalyst for, I mean, maybe you could even call yourself the first domino for that huge fall of UT people into the company.
Yeah, but then like, that came a lot of responsibility, and it was such a young company that it was a lot of like, maturity from everybody that needed to be there. So it was stressful. It was just stressful. It was so stressful, and especially because it's a creative environment and everyone is more passionate. So it's harder for people not to take things personally, and it's just a ball of stress.
And nobody likes the boss.
Yeah. I mean, no one likes the boss. But then again, I don't want to downplay like my mistakes or whatever.
Sure.
It's the last thing I want from like the whole point of this is not like, I hope no one like thinks any worse of anyone or the company. It's just these things happened, and it's interesting. Like it's an interesting story. It's one of those times I think where the truth becomes more interesting than the fiction. But I think it's like overall like a really great experience. And I think hopefully for most people, it was mostly a good experience. And it does break my heart that some people, it was a negative experience for them. That is a bummer. And so it's a bummer I'll always think about.
You've talked about a lot of really interesting things. We've gotten deep in the weeds on some of this, but let's pull back to a couple easy ones. Don't need long answers, but if you want to expound on them, totally go ahead. What is your go-to video? If you are having a conversation, you're on a double date with somebody, they say, oh, Brandon, worked at this entertainment company. What do you show them?
Definitely an Immersion. I think probably Racetrack Immersion. That was just like a tremendous experience, and I was so happy with the edit. The one we shot in Georgia, Chris and I directed. That was a really great one. The Fallout one, obviously, really great too. Video game car. In terms of the shorts, the music video short, which I was like sad that I missed. The one with Gus and the car and the village people thing. That was a great spot. I think the Captain America one, I think that was my pitch. It was just a dick joke. All the dick joke videos. Like the Shaft Shots wasn't my idea, but I was the champion for that. A real fun one. Angry Birds is a great one, and again, that one was just so special because it was literally 4 of us going around Austin. And like, there's one photo that I'm on the end of a jib. Marshall's working the camera. Chris is his legs are in the shot, and then Carrie's propping him up, and it was just the 4 of us and we just rented a truck and parked the truck in next to downtown Austin and just unloaded it all ourselves. Like, it was just doing it all ourselves, so that was all the, like, before all of the sets exploded with people and stuff, like, it was always really special to have like this small group that was nimble and efficient and could work without a lot of verbal communication. We were always just working around each other. And it also meant that we could joke and have fun because everybody was a different hand on, like, the tin armed creature, so it was cool to see that kind of, involvement, interaction. And then when we started introducing more people to it, when Barbara started doing shorts and Michael, it was like a really fun time. And I see people like, talk about the South Congress or the South Austin office, and that was definitely a time where I think people were probably the most happy. I was actually talking to Gavin. There's a YouTube rewind with that Macklemore song. And Gavin and Dan were like on the back of a trailer for it. And I was like, what year was that? Because that was, to me, I think, the pinnacle of YouTube culture. And I think it was 2013, he said. That was the peak of not only what we were doing and creating, but also what everyone else on YouTube, like iJustine, Freddie Wong, Smosh, FPS Russia, all the others. I know, that's such a weird fucking story.
Crazy, crazy.
That
name,
is crazy. That's a whole other. That's a podcast in itself.
I was young enough to still think he was a Russian guy.
Yeah, he was
I didn't
funny.
find out for years.
So
Oh,
funny.
Yeah.
He was so funny, and epic rap battles, before they got bought by Disney and stuff. So, like, I think that time was really special for a lot of people in the company, and it was definitely much more like a lot of friends just hanging out together and making stuff. Like, I think the series short we did, the Christmas one, was definitely one of like the most like positive vibe experiences we had on set, and everybody doing something that they loved and they believed in, and they gave their all. After
you left the company and, you're going through these stresses, did anyone in particular reach out to you? Was there anyone who was very, helpful or kind of reached out a hand or anything like that?
Not really. I mean, like, I would chat with people every now and then. But it was tough, because I obviously felt like you have senses of like that you failed or shit, and there was also I think awkwardness because I took the mental health break, and I think just a lot of people don't know how to act. And that was always, it was a really interesting learning experience. Like, I think it's naturally uncomfortable for people, and it's just like reminding them, like, y'all, you have no idea how many other people go through the same thing. You don't even know. It is really not a big deal. But like, I remained close with Chris. He was on my podcast once. I was on his. We were buddies, and kept in touch during COVID. Gus and I would. And still do DM randomly, mostly about plane shit. And he invited me to into his plane. And I was like, no kidding. I love you, but no, never. I'm never doing that. I mean, I think at one point, like Jeff invited me out to a Jackass movie, which was really sweet. I think it's just harder for me though, because it was hard for me not to see my own failure in their faces or eyes, sure. I guess. Yeah. Because you get so fixated on that, but it's just hard not to live in your mistakes and repeat them and stuff. So it was really great to to talk to them and see them. And Jordan and I like to hang out a lot, and Eric as well. So I was really close to them for a while. Not so much the last couple years or so, but yeah. So I mean, all very positive experiences with people, but Chris is really the only one that I like would hang out with socially. I think I saw him on New Year's Eve was the last time we celebrated New Year's together. So hopefully you see I want to be very careful. I don't want to characterize anyone did anything wrong to me, and I feel like I can do that with acceptable risk now, but before it's like I don't want to trigger people and like be a reason people are canceling first subscriptions because they're overreacting to some shit. Right. The SVOD stuff, you live and die by SVOD. So, when the company went all in on SVOD and was like, all right, now you guys are making all of this stuff behind a paywall, which was so hard to sell to the team because they wanted to release stuff on YouTube where as many people are going to watch it.
Sure.
So when you build your business on the SVOD, and then all of a sudden, you have bad PR and you're losing subscriptions, it becomes like a death spiral in itself, and especially when those lost subscriptions could lead possibly to price increases, then you lose more. So it's just like this, like a negative feedback loop. So yeah, I never wanted to be a contributor for that. I never wanted to be a reason why like some of my friends might have something not funded. So when the company did finally like go away, I was like, oh sweet, I can like talk about this stuff now without having to worry about anyone like freaking the fuck out on Reddit. Hopefully.
Here's a question. I moved to Austin about 2020, and I moved from New York City. I noticed seemed to be a lot more Rooster Teeth fans around Austin for whatever reason. Do you get recognized still? Do you still feel like you run into Rooster Teeth fans here?
Sometimes, but not nearly as much as it was in the mid 2010s. It's slowed down in the mid 2010s because I was doing less stuff on camera. And then the company just exploded. There was just so many people, so there was less opportunity to be on screen, less opportunity to travel. I mean, it wasn't long ago, but it doesn't happen often. Maybe 2 or 3 times a year because I work in corporate. I work for like big corporations, so I'm in a lot of Slacks and send a lot of emails, and I'll get a thing. It happened in front of my boss. Someone was like, "Oh, I just want to say thank you for everything you did." And my boss thought it was because of my work, like for the what I was doing. And I didn't want to have to explain that, like, no, I was on like this like internet thing back in the day. And it's, it's hard to explain what that was. Even at the time,
Captain America's dick got made smaller and,
That was always a funny thing too. I remember like, when people would ask what we did, if we were in groups, like, the way that I would describe it versus Miles and Barbara was so different. Because they would
elaborate on that.
Be like, "Oh, Rooster Teeth, it's like this thing. It's like blah 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 blah. We do all this blah blah blah," and I'd be like, "Oh, we make videos on internet. That's it." Like I think the way people would say is like, "It sounds like you make porn." Like I'm like, "Yeah, we do this thing and we put stuff up and that's it." So like. Because like I didn't come from the fandom. I was never a Kool-Aid drinker in the cult. I was always like, y'all need to hang out with people who aren't your coworkers more.
Right.
This is not healthy. That just made me a curmudgeon.
Try to catch you off guard with something. How did the Gate saga end at the 636 office?
Fuck,
do you remember that?
Gate. Yeah, I regret. I don't know why. Just solar seemed like a good idea. I just didn't know enough about solar at the time. Then Bernie was so mad. It was like a thing that never ended, So that was like the best part about leaving company. I was still bitter. I'm not super bitter because I deserved it. Because like I stressed Michael out a lot, but when he was like fucking with me on like Friday night. When I wanted to go home, it was like 7:30 on a Friday night, and he was like in his apartment opening the gate, and I was trying to figure out what it was.
Oh, like he could reach it from his like window?
He could reach it from, yeah. So he was just like watching, he was like sitting on his balcony, probably drinking, watching me fuck with the gate, trying to leave. Like I deserved it. Any qualms with that?
I don't know about that.
No, I'm telling you, like, you just, you do your best, but like, you're just, you wish you were a better manager and a better worker to people because you think mostly in the end of the day, like about negative experiences people might have had with you, and you're like, I wish they didn't leave with that.
Mm-hmm. As far as positive experiences, what you're doing now, you're working in corporate America. Are you what's your long-term goal? You talked a little bit about Power Rangers.
Yeah, I miss performing and I miss creating. Right now I'm trying to like familiarize myself with the tools, particularly a lot of the AI tools, because like I do think like I would have been successful if I had the same tools today, or I had the same tools back in like 2019, 2020 that we have today, because it just allows you to get more stuff done, being more familiar with those. Not only just AI video generation, but all of the tools at your disposal with it. So it's really trying to hone those skills and then figuring out, okay, like how do we deploy this? Like I have certain pet projects. I think I accidentally, I'm not going to say what it is, but I accidentally sent you my, like, I have a pseudonym.
Right.
I like, yeah, you know, I've always liked writing poetry and shit. So I started using AI to help like make music, and it kind of hones on these skills that I developed as an editor, sourcing music and understanding like, you know, beats and rhythm and how to like, you know, and using terms in order to find those things, or in this case, create them. So I'm, you know, as a therapeutic project, have this like, you know, these AI songs or whatever that are out there. But it's, you know, I really want to get back to performing. You know, I really want to get back to putting myself out there and creating content, and interacting with people like you and everyone else. What is the focus? Where should I be putting my time? You know, I think it's so hard to do something, you know, with other people. And I'm like, I don't think I can sustain a podcast of just me. I think that would be tough, but I mean, it is something I'd love to do because I love talking. I love, you know, making shit and creating. So it's hard to know where to put my, you know, eggs in the basket. So if anybody's listening to this and they're like, have an idea for what they think I should fucking do, just tell me and I'll fucking do it. No, I'm kidding.
Oh man.
But yeah, it's just basically in trying to beef up all of the things that you can eventually roll out and deploy. And Marshall's actually been a great partner in this the AI journey. Like we talk every week about like what we're seeing, what we're learning and stuff, and it's really fascinating. I definitely don't think I think a lot of people are in denial about AI video, and it reminds me a lot of the discussion when I was in film school about digital versus film. But I think they're gonna see the writing on the wall pretty quickly. You know, and especially because it just keeps getting better and better. Like that new model out of China, I forget. It's like something two. It's just incredible. It's just ridiculous.
I feel like a lot of creators aren't pro AI.
Yeah, no, I'm very bullish on AI in general. I use it a lot in my corporate work. I use it to write scripts for me like almost every day, and programs, and you know, I'm able to like accomplish so much. And the one thing that I think is the most misunderstood thing about it, like I don't know if you know, I mean, everyone knows about this, but I'm pretty leftist, and especially when it comes to environmental issues. Like I drive a car once a month. I take public transit to work. I use my e-bike to get around. Like I care about my carbon footprint, and I'm very bullish on AI. And I think the idea that, well, AI is bad for the environment is a unbelievably simple, short-term perspective. Because first, AI is a opportunity to fundamentally change the way that we're able to make decisions, and we're able to process information and distribute information. It's an opportunity. And I think what's frustrating is people are like, well, people just don't have to consume that much. It's like, that's not how people work. You can't just say if everyone did something different, then something different would happen. That's just not, that's not natural, right?
It's too abstract.
So I was a doomer before AI because we know where this is all going. And you know, just recently we saw like the rollback of a lot of environmental regulations at the EPA and stuff. So it sucks. With AI, people vastly overestimate the human mind and ability. I think large language models really entirely operate on the same principles that human communication does. I mean, what we're doing right now, this is a technology. This is not natural to humans. We built a code base called language that we use in order to better understand each other. This is a code, okay? It has variables, we'll call them nouns, that mean certain things. It has actions or expressions, verbs, and there's a syntax. You put this before this in order to create this meaning. It is a technology. And that's what large language models are. They are the embodiment, the digital embodiment of the technology of communication. And these large language models learn in large part the same way we do. We observe patterns, repeated patterns, and that allows us to understand a sense of truth and a sense of what is real. And what the opportunity there is, we can have a accessible tutor that is probably at the level of a bachelor student, available to anyone in the world at any time. Like I've done a couple like podcasts with ChatGPT, and the experiment's always like, I want you to explain this topic to me, but in these terms, like using movie references or, you know, whatever someone could be interested in. It's like those like bad 90s movies where the teacher goes in and like reaches the kids. You got to reach the kids. Like, so it's
Stand and deliver. Yeah.
yeah. And so not only in terms of with education, but just being able to process information. Like logic is a structure, okay? And it is something that is hard to get people to constantly think about. You have a claim, you have a warrant that explains why this claim is true, and then you have the impact of that. So understanding logistical syllogisms is not easy for a lot of people, but if we with these large language models that can look at communication more mechanically than we often can, you're more likely to be able to find opportunities where we can build consensuses around data, and it becomes less focused on personalities trying to push certain narratives. And you obviously have a big power demand, which is a good thing because it creates economic models now that can work. Because we're creating a much bigger demand, there is then a corresponding opportunity in order to build more green, not only plants, but also the big one is transmission lines. I think AI in general is a unbelievable opportunity to accomplish more and get more stuff done. Like it helps me organize my thoughts a lot. And I think, you know, I think a lot of the animosity behind it is off base a little bit. And I think people need to be thinking about how do we make this more sustainable by better choices in our technology and our investments, and not how do we kill this thing that is, it's the next evolution of humanity.
The problem is there's so much nuance in what you're saying that I just don't know how easily digestible that is. Because it's a fascinating point, especially where you talked about explaining things to people that it might be smart people, it might be very well educated people who just don't understand a completely different expertise, and having explained to them in different terms. I mean, that's such a valuable thing, and AI will just do it for you in your own terms instantly.
Yeah, it is the most significant invention since the nuclear bomb. Like it's the thing that actually does worrying me tremendously, that I don't think people are talking about, is how does an economy work when no one has a job? There's this idea that, oh, we'll just print money and give printed money to everybody, but then money's not worth anything. Then everything is going to go up in price. Like we need to be thinking about what happens when no one can afford to pay for anything because no one has a job. The tech companies aren't going to be making money because no one's going to be paying them, because no one needs to work because there's a robot or an AI that can do the job significantly better. And that's a very difficult question to answer. How do you decide who gets to buy a yacht and who doesn't? How do you get to decide who lives in a big house and who lives in a small house? It's the most important question that we need to be focused on right now. And like I said, there's a lot of opportunity. We need a change in leadership. I'm pretty pessimistic about humans as politicians, but no one likes my idea of replacing all the politicians with AI models.
AI? Oh boy, that's a hot take.
People vote on, their values that they want them. I mean, you can't take an AI to Red Lobster or get an AI a hooker and blackmail them.
You can't send them to Epstein's Island and get dirt on them. Yeah.
Do you have any idea how many politicians have dirt on them? And that's why they do what they do. It's such a that's a whole other topic. It's a whole other thing.
I feel like it's important to mention here that you are very politically active and you participate in marches.
And I want to make it clear. I'm not like, AI should be in charge of everything. I think people are failures. So it's more of it's a joke. It's a joke I'm only 20% serious about.
It's a very real joke. Yes.
Very real joke of like, because large language models work so well with deciphering factors and being able to keep everything in mind of how to make decisions and priorities. It's just it's a tremendous tool. And I tell people at my firm, I'm like, look, if you're not using this, then you're going to fall back, because the people who are going to be do better work, and they're going to do it faster. It's having like a digital version of yourself that can help. And I tell you what, I use it often also for personal stuff when I'm like, okay, how did I go wrong in this text message? Because this girly is not flirting with me anymore.
It's not working.
It's like, and its reply is like, bro, ... It's like, you got to like be in the moment. You got to stop. You went on like a paragraph tangent about Naked and Afraid when you should have just like it's like having a sounding board of someone that's never going to get tired of you. And I think it helps. And I think you see that with the neurodivergent community in large, using AI in order to help better understand and be better in like personal interactions with people. So I'm a big pro AI guy. I made a video spot for a RFP, and I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity, both in terms of content, but also just in terms of like how it can help transform and improve society, including the environment.
Man, Brandon Farmahini, a technological and internet renaissance man. I don't think I'm going too far to say. He's politically active, a pillar of the early internet, especially a lot of your favorite early Rooster Teeth videos that you might not have known, but Brandon Farmahini was there, orchestrating from behind the scenes, behind the camera.
Yeah, a lot of I definitely miss all of the directing and the creative producing and everything. It was a really great time, particularly all of the time on Immersion. As I said, like I directed and was the chief creative or co-creative for all of the immersions until Fallout. Fallout was my last one. So, really great experience, and thankful for the time that I spent at Rooster Teeth, and really thankful for being a small part of a community, that helped create and build the influencer culture that is now being bastardized and commercialized to fuck. But it is special to see how these multi-million-dollar firms are making these, shitty looking videos of like, fake influencers, because of what we did authentically, what we created authentically. And I don't mean just Rooster Teeth or myself. I mean, Justine, everyone involved in that community, what we created from nothing. And that I think was really special. And I look forward to when, someone takes a mantle to tell that YouTube story.
One of the best things about being a post Rooster Teeth fan, a current Rooster Teeth fan, has been watching the turnaround on Brandon. Everyone was dogging on him, and then all of a sudden, when he wasn't on camera anymore, everyone missed him. So if you're one of those people,
everyone,
well, a lot of
people,
if they're watching this,
money to perpetually.
Well, if you're one of those people who said something negative about Brandon at any point, say something positive here. Go follow Brandon on Instagram, because we have not heard the last of Brandon Farmahini. He's still, the 20-year-olds wouldn't see you as a young man, but you are still a young man ready to take advantage of everything. And you have, potentially AI on your side, unless, robots and taking over
on us.
Yeah. We get a Cyberdyne situation.
So I hope it lets me be one of those servants. I can be like a servant girl with like a Princess Leia bikini and like a chain around my neck from the robot.
And then you try to choke the robot with the chain and it doesn't really work. And then
I'm always super nice. No, except for Siri. I'm really mean to her.
What's the AI equivalent of a Sarlacc pit? What do they drop you into?
Shit, who knows, man.
Well, Brandon, thank you so much, man. Would love to hear more from you, and great talking to you.
Yeah, great talking to you as well. I hope you have a great night.
You too, man.
All right.